Hi there, Simon Weston here again. This is my golf swing today we're going to take a look at. This was filmed 2012 in Beijing at their outdoor facility. Now, this is the same swing. I've got two versions of it on the left and the right. The one on the left is obviously the address position, and that's going to stay there throughout this video. I'm not going to move that at all. And the one on the right is exactly the same, but that's the one we're going to move. So essentially we'll be able to see the difference between the starting position and how we're moving, and basically the difference between the address position and the impact position. Now, a lot of golfers I see are unaware that the impact position is quite different to address. A lot of golfers believe you're coming back to the same position to hit the golf ball where you are at the start. Now that's just simply not true. The address position obviously is very stationary. The golf swing itself is very dynamic, and try to get back into the same position is very unrealistic, and even if you did, would result in a very poor impact. Now, taking a look at the lines that I've drawn on the screen, I've got two red lines on the outsides of my legs. I've got a blue line directly up from the golf ball, which is just to the left side of my head, which means my spine is tilted, the head's behind the ball. I've got a yellow line on the shaft itself. This was an 8-iron I was using, and a little yellow circle on my hands at address. Now, the camera's perfectly positioned, nice height, not moving, so it's a perfect video to do this with. If we run this swing through, so we look at the takeaway. How I start my swing here is more with the upper body, the chest, the shoulders, the arms, all moving together nicely in the first part of this swing. So once I've achieved the shaft parallel to the ground, not a lot's happened in terms of changing of angles. In the wrists have still basically stayed the same. The right leg hasn't done too much yet. There's a little bit of a movement off that red line, but that's because my hips are starting to turn. That's pretty normal. Now, so we get back a little further into this golf swing. Alright, so I'm approaching the top of my backswing here. You see I play more of a 3/4 length swing here. Lower body is resisting nicely. Still turning, but not overturning by any means. Still made a nice turn through the upper body here. So again, perhaps less than 90 degrees. The right leg is nice and strong here. The knee is still flexed. The weight's loaded up into the right leg. Now, there's a reason why there's a gap here. I've moved off that red line because my hips have turned. So obviously if I've turned a little bit side onto the camera, I look a little bit narrower. That explains that gap that's appeared. One thing that I've worked hard over the years in my swing is maintaining width through here. Now, I do play with a straight left arm. Not everyone does that, and to be honest with you, it's not that important that you do have a straight left arm. I think a lot of good players' left arm is slightly bent, but that's just how I am. It's not something you have to do, but you do want to have width. You do want to have this right hand and right arm out, here, away, pushing out from the body. Don't want to be narrow. Don't want the hands near my head, my hands behind my head. So I was pretty happy with this backswing here. Now, where it starts to really change is when we start coming down. Alright, this is where we're going to start to unleash the power into the golf ball. You'll notice that the first movement really is not coming from the club. It's coming more from my lower body, moving back towards the target as the club shaft and club head is sort of slowing down and changing direction. So at this point here, the downswing hasn't really yet begun, but the lower body is already starting to move back into the left. Now this is the one thing you see all good players do. They'll move into their left side before the club starts to swing down. Now what this is doing is it's loading the shaft of my club. The shaft of my club here is starting to bend as I come down. It's starting to load up some power. We can all see that there's a significant amount of what we might call lag between the shaft and the left arm, but that's just simply due to the fact that the lower body is leading the upper body, the upper body holds against the turn of the lower body just for a moment. But once the upper body starts to turn, then of course the arms start to come down. Once the arms come down, obviously the club starts to come down. So that's the sequence of the movement. The lower body leads the upper body. See my left knee moving out, my left side of my body moving out towards the target. The lower body starting to rotate out of the way to the left, right? Followed by the chest, arms, and then the club. As we come down a little further into this position, when the left arm is parallel to the ground, notice that my shaft is still fairly up in the air. The club head and the shaft are still well behind the left arm. Now, a lot of my students at that point in their golf swing, their shaft is already somewhere around here, so they tend to early release. They push that shaft out, the right wrist and hand pushing the club out towards the ball. That's a big mistake. Alright, we come down a little further and we get to this point here when the shaft of the club is now parallel to the ground. Now what I want you to notice is that my hands are almost back into that yellow circle. They're a little higher, but they're almost back over the golf ball. Alright, certainly the butt end of the grip is basically already over the top of the golf ball. Now you can clearly see that the shaft of the club is nowhere near where it was at address, and the head of the club obviously is nowhere near yet hitting the golf ball. So we're starting to see some differences, which is what we want. The other obvious difference here is now I've continued to move into my left side and I've gone out beyond that red line. So my weight clearly is into my left side pretty early in the downswing and moves nicely into the left side there. The position I'm in here right now is referred to as the delivery position. So I'm about to put the club on the ball, and the things we're looking for in a good delivery position is that the weight's moved to the left, which clearly it has there. The head is still mostly behind the ball, which we can see that it is. And a real key point here is the bend in that right wrist. Now, that right wrist was bent during the course of the backswing and at the top of the swing. We don't see it here because of the camera angle, but as we're coming down, we're maintaining bend in that right wrist, which we can see there. All of the top players are doing that. They're not pushing that right wrist down. So, delivery position looking nice. Left wrist is flat, right wrist is bent. Now, my hands, as you can see, have gone slightly past the yellow circle where we started. But look where the shaft of the club is. Look where the club head is back here. We still haven't hit the golf ball yet. So, here's the real telling point. When we're right on the golf ball, we're striking the ball, the shaft must have some forward lean like this. The only way you can ever achieve that is to still have a bend in the right wrist. Perhaps not as bent as it was at the top of the swing, but down you still want to have a noticeable bend in the right wrist. So the angle between the right arm and the shaft is quite a bit more than what it was at address. See the difference there? The hands are more ahead of the golf ball. That's where the shaft, the forward lean of the shaft is coming from. Important to note though that my head has still remained behind the ball. That's important. If you get your head, upper body in front of the ball, you're asking for a lot of problems. The weight clearly out here on the left side, so there's more of my lower body weight favouring my left side, with the head remaining behind the ball and the forward lean on the shaft. So what that really means is that the spine tilt has increased throughout my golf swing. I started with some spine tilt there on the left, but during the course of my swing, in fact during the course of what we call the transition, moving into the downswing, the spine tilt starts to increase. Now that doesn't mean that the weight's behind the ball just because my head's behind the ball. In fact my head is behind the ball, but my weight's on my left side. So if you're looking at what we call the impact alignments, you'll see that the arms are in a different position to where they were at address. The right arm is further forward, as is the left. The body is further forward. Those two things go together. The shaft is leaning more forward. The head has still remained mostly there behind the ball. And then we move all the way through into finishing the golf swing. So there we go. You'll notice the impact position is quite different to the address position, and that's absolutely what you want. Really, the three key points I want you to get out of this is when you're on the golf ball, when you're striking the golf ball, three things have to have happened. If not, you're going to have some problems. The lower body weight needs to be focused more into the left side. So there's a little push out there to the left. Right? My left hip is sort of up over my left foot. The other key point is that the head has remained mostly behind the golf ball. Now, if it's slightly more forward than that, okay. If the left eye was over the ball, that's still going to be probably okay, but it's not going to be okay at all if your head's out in this area here, right? Or even here. You need to have that head remaining behind the golf ball, which really means the tilt of the body has increased throughout the golf swing. And then the final one's to do with what you do with the club. I mean, the forward lean on the shaft. If we take this little gauge here, put this straight up in the air, you see I have just a very slight 1 or 2 degree of shaft lean forward at address. And then we do the same thing through my impact. This has now got somewhere around 9 or 10 degrees of forward shaft lean. Quite a difference. The hands are ahead of the golf ball. So there's your three key points. Weight of the lower body forward, head remain behind the ball, and the forward lean on the shaft. Right? What this will give you is a descending angle. The club will be moving down through the impact. You'll hit the ball first, followed by the ground. You'll make a nice divot every time. The divot will be in front of the golf ball, and you're going to start striking the ball a lot better. Now, in all the research and study I've done over the years about good players' golf swings, I tell you honestly, people, I've never ever seen a good player at the moment of impact whose head was in front of the golf ball. I've never seen it. So if your head's in front of the golf ball, you need to do something about fixing that. Second thing, I've never seen a good player who didn't appear to have more weight over in the lower body, of the lower body weight to the left side. So again, if you're stuck back in your right leg and can't get to the left, that's going to be a problem. And the last one is that club shaft there, how you've got that forward shaft lean. Now, I like to start with my hands basically just above the ball, so I've got a relatively centered shaft. Some players may want to put their hands a bit more forward than that. That's okay. But the key point is when you get back onto the golf ball, you've got to have that forward shaft lean that every good player seems to have. Yeah, nice bend in the right wrist, nice amount of angle that's still evident between the right arm and the left and the shaft right there. People who seem to struggle with their ball striking, their impact position looks a little bit too much like this, with the hands back, the shaft too vertical. So there you go. Perhaps the most important aspect of the golf swing, the impact. It's not the address, it is different. You address the ball in a certain way to allow you to get to a different position when you strike the ball. Alright, I hope you found that helpful. All the best.